It was the final days of 2024. The world outside was moving fast: AI breakthroughs, shifting economies, new millionaires being made overnight. Yet in a quiet apartment in the heart of the city, a young man named Daniel stared at his reflection in the window. He wasn't broke. He wasn't desperate. But deep inside, he knew he was stuck, surviving, not thriving. Daniel asked himself a question that burned in his chest: what if 2025 could be different? What if this year I became truly wealthy? But the more he thought about it, the more he realized something that shook him. Wealth wasn't about lottery tickets or luck. It was about habits, the daily rituals that separate the average from the extraordinary. That night, Daniel made a promise to himself: he would commit to learning and living the 10 habits of the wealthy. And this is the story of how those habits transformed his life. Habit: waking up with purpose. Daniel had never been a morning person. His alarm usually rang at 7:30 a.m., and like millions of others, he'd roll over, grab his phone, and start scrolling news, memes, social media. By the time he got up, his energy was already gone. But on January 1, 2025, he tried something new. The night before, he wrote down 3 goals on a notepad: research new investment opportunities, draft the outline for a digital product idea he'd been procrastinating, reach out to an old colleague about a potential partnership. At sunrise, Daniel didn't reach for his phone. He reached for that notepad. With a cup of black coffee steaming on his desk, he attacked the first goal. Within an hour, he felt an energy he hadn't felt in years, the kind of energy that comes from progress, not distraction. For the first time, Daniel understood: the poor use mornings to consume. The rich use mornings to create. And with that, habit was born. Habit: daily learning. A week into January, Daniel made another discovery. He noticed that in conversations, he had little to contribute beyond small talk. His knowledge was outdated. His thinking felt average. So, he built a new ritual: 30 minutes of reading every day. Not fiction. Not social media articles. But the kinds of books and papers millionaires devour: business strategy, psychology, investing, future technologies. One evening, he read about Warren Buffett, the billionaire who spends nearly 80 of his day reading and thinking. That struck Daniel. Wealth wasn't only about money. It was about the quality of decisions. And the quality of decisions came from knowledge. Within weeks, Daniel's mind began to change. Conversations with colleagues shifted. He no longer just reacted, he contributed. He saw opportunities where others only saw problems. He realized that knowledge compounds faster than money. And in 2025, those who adapt, learn, and evolve would leave everyone else behind. Habit: invest instead of just saving like most people. Daniel grew up being told: save your money. Be careful. Don't take risks. So, he had always kept his earnings tucked away in a savings account. But when he checked it closely, he noticed something shocking. Inflation was eating away his savings faster than his bank's interest could grow them. That night, he dug into articles, podcasts, and books. He studied how the wealthy built fortunes not by saving, but by investing. Real estate, stocks, startups, even AI-driven ventures. They understood that money left idle was money dying. Daniel decided to start small. He moved a portion of his savings into an index fund. He bought fractional shares of tech companies shaping the future. He even researched real estate crowdfunding projects. Each investment felt like planting seeds, tiny now, but destined to grow into a forest of wealth. And for the first time, Daniel felt like he wasn't just earning. He was building. Habit: protecting time like it's gold hourglass. Not done by February, Daniel noticed something odd. Even with new habits, he still felt drained. Not because he lacked energy, but because he was drowning in tasks. Laundry, errands, emails, pointless meetings. One evening, exhausted, he stumbled on a quote from a wealthy entrepreneur: poor people trade time for money. The rich trade money to buy back their time. It hit him like lightning. He realized he had been spending his most precious resource, time, on things that didn't matter. So, Daniel began delegating. He used apps to automate bills. He paid a freelancer online to handle routine tasks for his digital project. He even hired a part-time assistant to manage his schedule. At first, it felt indulgent. But within weeks, Daniel found himself free to focus on big-picture moves, the kind that actually created wealth. Time wasn't just money. Time was life itself. And now, he was finally rich in both. Habit, building multiple streams of income. By March, Daniel's perspective shifted completely. He realized that his job, once his only source of income, was nothing more than a single fragile thread. He imagined, what if I lost it tomorrow? What if one paycheck vanished? That fear turned into determination. He studied the wealthy again. They didn't rely on one paycheck. They built 7 or more streams of income. Investments, businesses, digital products, royalties, side hustles, all flowing like rivers into the same ocean of wealth. So, Daniel got to work. He launched his first small digital course, teaching a skill he already knew. He started freelancing in the evenings. He expanded his investments into dividend-paying stocks. Slowly, those streams trickled in. Each one felt like a step away from survival and a step toward freedom. And with that, Daniel began to understand, the rich don't just work for money. They make money work for them. Daniel had already transformed into a different person. The habits were no longer just concepts. They were becoming part of his identity. But the journey had just begun. Because the real test wasn't starting habits. It was staying disciplined when the excitement faded. And that's where his story takes its next turn. The test of discipline. By April, Daniel was unrecognizable compared to the man he'd been only months before. His mornings were sharper. His evenings were filled with learning. His bank account was no longer just a graveyard for savings but a growing field of investments. But here's the truth, change is easy when it's new. The real battle begins when the novelty fades. And Daniel was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Habit, mastering discipline over motivation. One rainy morning, Daniel's alarm rang at 5:30 a.m. He groaned, rolled over, and for the first time in months, he hit snooze. He told himself he deserved a break. That missing one day wouldn't matter. But one day became 2. Then 3. His productivity slipped. His workouts faded. His goals sat untouched. And that's when it hit him, motivation is fragile. It comes and goes like the weather. If he wanted to stay on track, he couldn't rely on feeling motivated. So, he studied athletes. Champions didn't show up because they felt like it. They showed up because they had built discipline into their bones. Rain or shine, tired or not, they executed. Daniel rebuilt his system. He set stricter routines, reminders, and accountability. He used apps to track habits. He even told close friends about his goals so they'd call him out if he slipped. And slowly, he realized a profound truth: discipline is doing what needs to be done, especially when you don't feel like it. That single shift, from motivation to discipline, made him unstoppable. Habit, networking with the right people. Up until now, Daniel's journey had been a solo mission. But one evening, he attended a small business networking event. At first, he felt out of place, surrounded by people who seemed smarter, richer, more confident. But instead of shrinking, Daniel leaned in. He introduced himself, listened carefully, and asked genuine questions. That night, he connected with a software entrepreneur, a real estate investor, and a marketing expert. Within weeks, those conversations turned into partnerships, ideas, and opportunities Daniel never could have created alone. He remembered the saying, "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future." For years, Daniel had surrounded himself with complainers, people who blamed the economy, their bosses, or bad luck. And guess what? He had started thinking the same way. Now, being around builders, dreamers, and doers, his mindset shifted. He began to think bigger, act bolder, and believe in possibilities that once felt out of reach. He realized networking wasn't about collecting contacts. It was about connecting with the right people. And suddenly, doors that had been locked for years began to swing open. Habit: taking calculated risks. By mid-2025, Daniel faced his first major decision. A friend introduced him to a startup looking for early investors. The idea was bold, risky, and uncertain. His family warned him, "Don't do it. Play it safe. Keep your money." Old Daniel would have listened. But Daniel remembered the stories of Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and every great entrepreneur who risked security for possibility. He studied the numbers, researched the market, and asked tough questions. This wasn't gambling. This was a calculated risk. In the end, he invested. Not recklessly, but with courage. Was he scared? Absolutely. But he realized something powerful: the greatest risk is not failure. The greatest risk is regret. No matter what happened, Daniel knew he'd rather say, "I tried," than spend his life whispering, "What if?" And that shift made him fearless. Habit: focus on solutions, not problems. In June, disaster struck. One of Daniel's side businesses, a small digital course he'd built, suddenly collapsed. A competitor launched a better version, and sales dropped to zero overnight. The old Daniel would have panicked, complained, maybe even quit. But now, something inside him snapped into focus. Instead of saying, "Why me?" he asked, "How do I fix this?" He studied his competitor, improved his content, and rebranded his course. He even added new features the competitor hadn't thought of. Within weeks, his sales bounced back, stronger than before. Daniel finally understood why entrepreneurs get paid so much. Not because they avoid problems, but because they solve problems at scale. That habit, turning every obstacle into a question of solutions, became one of his greatest strengths. Habit: playing the long game. Hourglass. Not done. By autumn, Daniel had grown more than he ever imagined. His income was diversifying. His network was expanding. His habits were unshakable. But as the year wound down, he faced his greatest temptation: impatience. Everywhere he looked, people were flaunting quick wins, crypto millionaires, viral influencers, overnight success stories. The temptation to chase shortcuts gnawed at him. But then, he remembered Warren Buffett's words: "The stock market is a device for transferring money from the impatient to the patient." Daniel realized that wealth wasn't built overnight. It was built through years of consistency, discipline, and patience. So, he doubled down. Instead of chasing fads, he kept planting seeds: investments, relationships, skills, and businesses. He stopped obsessing over daily results and started focusing on the decade ahead. And in that moment, Daniel crossed a line. He was no longer just building wealth. He was building legacy. The twist: by December 2025, Daniel looked back at the man he had been just a year before, the one staring at his reflection in the window, asking if life could be different. The answer wasn't just yes. The answer was proof. He wasn't just richer in money. He was richer in time, richer in knowledge, richer in relationships, and richer in freedom. And the twist? It wasn't luck. It wasn't fate. It wasn't even opportunity. It was habits. Tiny daily actions that most people ignore, but the wealthy build their lives upon. Conclusion: so, ask yourself this: which of Daniel's habits are already in your life? And which ones are missing? Because the truth is, 2025 isn't waiting. Wealth isn't built by chance. It's built by choice. And the choices you make today are the seeds of your tomorrow. Will you let another year pass by in survival mode? Or will you step into the discipline, courage, and patience that create true wealth? The answer is in your habits. And your future starts now. The resolution: the city was quiet on the final night of 2025. Fireworks were already being tested in the distance, painting bursts of color across the winter sky. Daniel sat on his balcony, a steaming cup of tea in his hand, reflecting on the year that had just passed. Only 12 months earlier, he had been an ordinary man, caught in routines that drained him, habits that held him back, and beliefs that kept him average. He wasn't poor, but he wasn't free either. He lived in that gray middle space where comfort becomes a trap. But now, everything had changed. A year of habits, a lifetime of change. Daniel opened the journal he had started back in January, the one where he'd scribbled his first 3 morning goals. As he flipped through the pages, he could see the story of his transformation in ink. Notes from books he had read. Ideas for investments. Lists of people he had met and partnered with. Lessons from risks that worked, and some that didn't. Every page told a story not of luck, but of consistency. He realized wealth wasn't an event. It was a process. A process built on small, unshakable habits. The man who once wasted mornings now conquered them with clarity. The man who once consumed now created. The man who once saved in fear now invested with confidence. The man who once worked for money now had money working for him. Daniel smiled. The habits had done their job. They hadn't just made him richer. They had made him different. The quiet truth about wealth. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Daniel thought about all the people he knew who were still trapped. Friends who said, "I'll start tomorrow." Colleagues who complained but never acted. Acquaintances chasing quick money, always burning out before the results came. And he realized something that cut deep: most people don't fail because they can't. They fail because they won't. They won't wake up with purpose. They won't read when it's easier to scroll. They won't invest because saving feels safer. They won't protect their time because busyness feels important. They won't build multiple incomes because one paycheck feels enough. They won't build discipline because motivation feels easier. They won't network because comfort feels safer than courage. They won't take risks because failure feels scarier than regret. They won't focus on solutions because complaining feels natural. They won't play the long game because shortcuts feel faster. And so, they stay stuck. Daniel knew the truth: habits are the real currency of the wealthy. And without them, no amount of talent, luck, or opportunity would matter. Passing the torch as the countdown to the new year began. 10, 9, 8. Daniel made one final decision. He would share his story. Not as a boast, not as a lecture, but as a reminder. A reminder that ordinary people become extraordinary when they master extraordinary habits. That wealth is not a miracle but a discipline. That the choice between survival and success is made every morning, every evening, every moment. Daniel didn't want to be the only one who crossed this threshold. He wanted others to rise with him. So, he raised his glass to the sky, whispered a quiet promise, and stepped into the new year, not just as a man who had built wealth, but as one who would help others build theirs. The mirror turns to you now. Imagine Daniel looking not into the city skyline, but into you. Because this story isn't just his. It's yours. You are standing where he once stood, staring into the next year, wondering if life can be different. Wondering if wealth is possible. Wondering if freedom is real. And the answer is the same. It's not luck. It's not chance. It's habits. The habits you choose to practice today will either trap you in the cycle of survival or elevate you into the freedom of wealth. The challenge, so, I'll leave you with one question, the same question Daniel asked himself at the start of his journey: what if 2025 could be the year everything changes? Not because the world changes. Not because luck arrives. But because you change. What if you built the 10 habits of the wealthy and stuck with them? What if 1 year from now, you looked back at the person you are today and barely recognized them? That's not just possible. It's inevitable, if you choose it. The only difference between the rich and the average is the decision to begin. The invitation. So here's your invitation: take Daniel's story and make it yours. Choose one habit today. Just one. Then another tomorrow. Stack them. Strengthen them. Live them. And watch what happens to your wealth, your freedom, and your future. Because the truth is, 2025 will pass no matter what. The only question is, will you let it pass you by, or will you rise with it? The choice is yours. And your next level starts now.